in. So I will start. My name is Chivuli Ukwimi, pronouns she, her. And as you know now, I am the Deputy Director of the International Trans Fund. Just recently joined the International Trans Fund and happy to have done so, especially coming from this region and representing the region and also the global South within the Trans Fund. I'm originally from Zambia, so I'm Zambian, and I currently live in Zambia. I had previously lived in South Africa for quite some time, but I relocated back, and I have been doing some activist work as well with many of the trans group in Zambia, but across Africa as well. So I'm not sure if I could just follow the list and ask people to introduce themselves, or we can just have people. How do you usually do it?
Pass the mic.
Yes, I will pass the mic, definitely. So I'd like to pass the mic to Teboho Makwati, because the mic is on. So I know that you're probably ready to go. Over to you, Teboho.
Yeah, good afternoon. It's Teboho Makwati, pronoun they and them. I am originally from the Northern Cape, South Africa, representing Intersex South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, Teboho. Would you pass the mic?
Jabu.
Okay.
We're gonna go.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Jabu, Iranti, he, his pronouns. Passing to Gita. Gita, are you there?
Oh, maybe, yeah. Let me pass it on to...
Hi, everyone. I'm Geeta.
Oh, great.
Yeah, my signal is very bad. We're experiencing some load shedding, so now
Okay. Yeah, load shedding, not only in South Africa, but everywhere, actually. Let me pass it over to Crystal. Okay.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Crystal Hendricks. My pronouns are she and her. I'm a programs officer at Iranti and also work with Intersex South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask McLean?
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I can't be on video. I hope you excuse me. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, is it morning? Yeah, good afternoon, everyone, and so lovely to be here. My name is McLean Kawe, and I'm the director of the Lotus Identity from Zambia.
Thank you, McLean. Please pass the mic.
I'll pass it on to, in no particular order.
No particular order.
Okay, I'll pass on the mic to Sazi.
Great.
Okay.
Hi, Sazi. So for some reason we can't hear Sazi. can I pass it to?
Priscilla, are you there?
Yes, I am here. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Sure. My name is Priscilla Pumlelo Komazake, as it's written there. I am a trans woman and I work at She under the advocacy and capacity enhancement coordinator. So I coordinate various projects. It's great to be here and I can't wait to learn and to share all this information with other people who are interested. And I will pass the mic to Ndutuzo. I'm not sure if Ndutuzo already said something, but I haven't heard them. Ndutuzo.
Okay, sorry about that. I'll pass the mic to Bulelani Mzila.
Hi everyone. Hello.
We can hear you.
Okay, sure. My name is Bulelani Mzila. I'm from Pietermaritzburg. I am gender non-conforming, a gender diversity political activist, and it is good to be here. And I hope that I will learn a lot. I will also have to pass. I'm actually representing Isibani Civil Society Forum, and we are working on encouraging the LGBTIQ community to enter the political space, and we are encouraging political parties to open up space for the community so that they are able to get into that space and actually advocate for LGBTIQ issues within those spaces, and also encouraging government to be able to push for inclusivity and to have inclusive policy that speaks to the LGBTIQ community. And we have various programs. One we did last year was speaking on Trans Remembrance Day, and we always we're advocating for gender affirming healthcare in the province of Natal. So I guess I will pass the mic after speaking. So I don't know if Sazi Charlie has spoken, but I will just pass the baton to her.
So Sazi is having some challenges, and Sazi has introduced.
Oh, okay, cool. So who hasn't? Because so I guess I will give it to Gita November.
Gita also has connections.
Yeah.
Can I ask Sylvester?
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm called Sylvester Kazigwe, and I am from Uganda. I am the Deputy Executive Director of Trans Network Uganda. And I'm excited to be here. I'm looking forward to the discussion today. Yeah, my pronouns are he, him, and I'm a trans man. Yeah, thank you. I think I'll call on to Teddy.
Okay, thank you, Sylvester. I see Teddy's audio is still connecting. Maybe we can have Pinti.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Pinti. I come from the Kingdom of Eswatini. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a trans woman. I actually work with Transwati, which is an organization that is mainly trans-led and advocates for trans rights, visibility, and access to services across the country. We work at actually at a country level. Thank you so much.
So much. Teddy, are you ready? Teddy, are you ready to?
Hi guys.
Hey.
I don't know if you can hear me. I don't know if you can hear me.
You're audible.
Oh,
Please.
Hi, Chivuli, how are you?
I'm good,
Hi,
thanks.
everybody. Yes. So yeah, I came in a bit late. Is it introduction?
Yes, it's just introductions, your name, pronouns, organization, if possible, and also where you're joining us from.
I am joining you from Namibia. For really transgender masculine. Yeah, my.
All right. Okay. I think you were not clear, but I think we did get the gist of it, and happy that you're joining us from Namibia. Maybe I could ask, what did I say? Kumkani?
Hello.
Hi, Kumkani.
Hi, yes, I'm Kumkani and my pronouns are he, him. I come from queer narratives, yeah, and I'm from South Africa.
Great, thanks, Kumkani. And who else? Who? Oh, Pranav. Yes. Pranav?
May I introduce myself?
Oh, yes, please, go ahead.
I am Tania Morales. I am from Mexico City, and we work in Mexico. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the director of the organization. We work with human rights of trans childhood and youth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tanya. Happy to have you here.
Hello, everyone. I'm Pranav Giri from Nepal. I work in Unity for Change as a program manager. My pronouns are he, him. Thank you.
Thank you, Pranav.
Can Ken go next? April, would you like to go?
Yes. Can they hear me? Can you guys hear me? Hello.
Perfectly well.
Okay. I don't know if this works though. Okay. Oh yes, hi, my name is April Shabalala. I am from South Africa. I go by she, her pronouns. I'm a trans woman. And I'm representing Twane Trans Wellness, which is based in Pretoria. I'm happy to be here and it's nice to meet everyone.
Thank you, April. Anybody who hasn't had a chance to go?
I think Asa.
Okay.
I'd love to show you more of my
Good
dancing.
day, everyone. Good day, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I
Oh, my name is Isa Machimana. I am a trans woman from the Limpopo province in South Africa. Pronouns he, she, her, hers. I am currently working as a provincial coordinator for Access Chapter 2 in the province, and also a new director of a newly registered trans organization, which is called Baka Trans Organization. And I'm a trans activist. Thank you.
Yes. All right. Okay. I guess we are done with introductions, right? And we can jump right into. Oh yeah. And then we have people in the room as well. Yes. You can just come and please, sure.
Remove my mask.
Yeah, remove your mask.
Okay, thanks for the opportunity. Hello, everyone in the room. My name is Sia Shongwa. I'm a trans woman. I'm representing an organization, TransWorks Global. We're concerned with diversity issues in the trans space and really excited to be here. And yeah, looking forward to the deliberations. Oh, pronouns she and her.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Manzini. I'm the program officer at Iranti in South Africa. My pronoun is she. Thanks.
Hey everyone. Oh, how's everyone's heart? So I identify as a trans non-binary folk currently, pronouns she and they. I'm just trying to unlearn and relearn new forms of language, especially around autonomy and expression. I represent an organization, a new grassroots organization titled See Your Power Foundation, which will be working closely with trans persons in the rural space, because we know that trans persons are the most forgotten and the most silenced. And then, big thanks for everyone joining this space.
Hi everyone, Jade. Speaker at Eligibility, and I use they them pronouns.
Okay, thank you, Jay. That was all right. So I guess I mean, I know we've spent about 20 or so minutes to introduce ourselves, but it's always nice to get to know who's in the space. And you know, in COVID time, it's rare that we have these opportunities to interact. So I hope you bear with us with time, and we will try as much as to stick to time and also respect people's time. Okay, so I'm here to speak about the ITF, the International Trans Fund. I'm not sure how many of you know about the International Trans Fund. The International Trans Fund as an entity was founded 2015 after a lot of activists, funders, and allies and other like-minded folks came together, recognizing that trans groups and trans movements and trans work across the globe remains not resourced enough. So we did, there was a recognition of ensuring that we had a dedicated fund that could respond to the needs of trans organizations and trans movements across the globe. So the ITF is a participatory grant maker, and in being a participatory grant maker, we are activist-led, which means that we use an approach that engages trans persons in our grant-making process. So unlike most foundations, unlike most traditional and conventional foundations where it's the members of staff within the foundations that would be making decisions around funding, we do have trans-led bodies within the structure of the ITF, which I will speak to later. And these are the ones that make the final decisions on where the resources are better placed and where the resources should go. I'm going to share a presentation. The aim is not to bore you with the presentation, but just so that we can have a structured conversation, and then after that, we can have a Q&A session. So please let me know if you're able to see the presentation. I just want to put it into presentation mode. Is the presentation visible? Okay, great. So apart from talking about the ITF as an entity and kind of like this being a meet and greet session for the ITF, I'm gonna ask Mtituzi to help me mute people. Okay, great. So I'm also going to speak about our 6th grant cycle. Like I mentioned, we've got a grant cycle that's out there, and we want as many people as possible to apply to the ITF. So in terms of today's agenda, I'll just give an overview of our 5 grant making cycles and also dive deep into the 2021 grant making cycle. So just to give you an overview of how much the ITF has disbursed to date, since 2017, when we made our first grants, I think this was an exciting moment. As I mentioned, we were founded in 2015, but only started making the grant, only started disbursing grants somewhere around 2017. The first grant we made was, we made to 29 trans-led groups for about 500,000. And you can see that we have since grown, which is really exciting because this is one of the objectives of the ITF, to ensure that we get more and more resources to trans communities and to trans groups across the globe, especially in the Global South. So starting with 500,000 in 2017 and only 29 organizations, where we're sitting right now in 2021, we are looking at almost $1.2 million, and we are targeting 50 groups. So we receive a high volume of applications, just like with any funding entity. And all eligible applicants are reviewed by at least 2 grant-making panel members. So about the ITF, just in terms of what our purpose is, for those of you who may not have heard about the ITF before, we have three key areas that we strive to implement under our new strategy. So we work to build and sustain a mechanism that supports trans-led organizations of different sizes, working on a range of different issues across the globe. We also aim to increase resources and enhance access to resources to support trans movements. And then we also educate peers in the philanthropic community on trans issues and influence other funders and strategic allies. Number 3 is particularly important because we as the ITF cannot reach everyone. I mean, we are a small fund, so we invest a lot in ensuring that the bigger foundations out there, including government funding, is cognizant of the needs of trans movements across the globe. So philanthropic advocacy is a huge piece of our work. In the philanthropy spaces where we find ourselves, we always continue to echo the voice and say, we need to get more and more funding to trans-led groups. So as I mentioned, we're a participatory grant maker. And what I just mean by participatory grant maker is that we are activist-led. So trans people are at the front and center of our grant making process. So the grant making panel is made up of 15 trans activists from around the globe. And the grant making panel reviews eligible applications and also selects grantees. The ITF also has a steering committee, and the steering committee ratifies the decisions of the grant-making panel and also the secretariat. I will now dive deep into our 2022-2023 grant-making process, which is the current call that is out there. The funding priorities for the current call is to fund the diversity of groups, including different regions, different languages, gender identity, strategies, and issues. We also want to reach Trans communities facing greater levels of marginalization. So we also recognize that within our communities, we have a lot of intersectionality and also a variation of marginalizations, including issues around racism, classism, ageism, albinism, misogyny, and so on. So as the ITF, we are very cognizant of those issues, because we can have marginalization within the marginalized, and that is something that is particularly important for us to consider. We also want to support trans groups whose work is intersectional and contributes to social justice, movement building, and the liberation of trans people. So it's very important that we also look at some of the intersectionalities that we as trans people continue to face. All right. So the eligibility criteria, I think this is particularly important. So the organization must be trans-led. And I know probably I am going to have a few questions around this, right? Like how do we assess, how do we ensure that an organization is trans-led? You will appreciate that when we put out a call, quite a number of people, quite a number of organizations take the opportunity to apply within the LGBTI sector, but also outside the LGBTI sector. And for the International Trans Fund, we do insist that an organization must be trans-led, and it also must be trans-focused. So what we mean by trans-led is trans people must be in decision-making roles, including setting up the organization's strategic and financial priorities, and make up at least 75% of the staff, the spokespeople, the board, or the decision-making body. So this is particularly important for eligibility. Secondly, if this is not the case, right? So we can make some exceptions, because we might find that in certain settings, certain communities, there might be a need by trans groups, but maybe there's no trans-led organization. So in this case, groups must demonstrate how trans people make the budget and organizational and also strategic decisions. So we need to ensure that trans people are in the decision seats when we disperse funds to these organizations. Also, the organization must have an operational budget of under $100,000. So if you're an organization that has an annual budget of $10 million, you wouldn't be eligible, because we want to get funding across to as many community-led organizations as possible, because you know how the story goes, right? The bigger organizations are able to get funding from the usual funders, the usual private and public foundations, and also government funding. So we want to ensure that the resources that we have at ITF are going to where it matters the most, and this is at the grassroots level. Also be a group and not an individual. So for this particular call, we need to have a group. You do not necessarily have to be formally registered, but you should be able to demonstrate that you are a group of trans activists and not just a single individual. And then the main focus of work should be work that benefits the trans community. I should also mention that I am able to share this presentation. So yeah, just so that you don't, you don't burden yourself with taking too many notes. But yeah, I will also, I mean, the folks at Iranti could also help me share the presentation as well. And then the work must also contribute to movement building and not just providing direct services. So the funding that we usually provide is usually categorized into two. We do have unrestricted funding, but then we also do have based funding, where in your application, you're able to demonstrate what you will actually dedicate the funding to. But we do not insist on it being entirely project funding, because we do realize that there are a lot of needs that organizations have and a lot of needs that organizations need to respond to. So for us, our priority is to ensure that we fund the work that is at the core of your organization, but then the work that also matters and that benefits your community the most. All right, so it's also important to know what we do not fund, right? So like I mentioned, we do not fund individuals. And I'm sure maybe somebody might ask me a question about that. We might have a few exceptions, but when we put out a call like this is primarily meant for organizations. We also don't fund organizations that are not led by trans people, even if they're working on trans issues. And organizations that do not work specifically to benefit trans people or communities. And then organizations, collectives, or networks with operating budgets above $100,000. And then organizations and projects that only provide direct services to individuals without contributing to trans movement building, right? So we want our funding to also contribute to movement building and not only provide direct services. Right? So we are happy to support other innovative and creative activities that are also not listed here. So yeah, so a wide range of movement building activities, awareness raising events, direct action, training sessions, support groups, media projects, political advocacy, resource development, art and activism collaborations, community-based research, community spaces, skills sharing courses, leadership or personal development programs, educational or political campaigns, demonstrations, and also mobilizing communities. So you will see that within the broader scheme of movement building, we are quite flexible in terms of what we are able to support. But like I mentioned earlier, we are also able to support and happy to support other innovative and creative activities that are not listed here. All right, so I don't know if I should pause at this point, because now I'm going to dive deep into the 6th grant cycle. So maybe it would be good just for me to pause a bit if anybody has questions. And I don't know whether we just want people to post questions in the chat box, or we can actually open the mic for people to ask questions. Okay, great. So people, if at this point, because I think I've just explained about process, if people have any process, eligibility questions, please do raise your hand and we'll be able to address that. And Tutuzo, you help me if you see any hands. If not, I will proceed to talk about the current grant cycle, which is the 6th grant cycle. So in the 6th grant cycle, we have, oh, there's a question. Yes, Nomsa, please go ahead.
I'm not sure if I missed it, but I wanted to check for the trans organization to apply. Do they need to be registered?
No, yes. So an organization doesn't have to be registered to apply. So we support organizations that are registered. We support organizations that are formally organized. We also support groups. So it may just be a group of trans activists that probably want to do a campaign, right? That come together, want to do a campaign. We're able to support that as well. And in that instance, we would request for a fiscal host for that organization. But the money wouldn't sit with the fiscal host. The fiscal host would just be a channel that we could facilitate the funds through, because some groups may not even have bank accounts at a particular time. So that is why we would need a fiscal host. But we would want to encourage, I think we have a lot of room and flexibility. A lot of funders will put in quite a number of restrictions, but for us, even if it's a group of trans people within a particular community that wanted to carry out a demonstration or a march, they could ask for funding and they could come together, ask for funding, deliver on that particular activity and disband. So that is also allowed, right? So you don't necessarily have to be a formally registered organization. So for this funding cycle, we have two types of grants. We have the seed grant, and we also have the Thrive grant, and I will explain the difference between the two. So the seed grant is a grant that would be given to organizations that have never received funding from the ITF before. And this is a 1-year general support grant ranging from 10 to 25,000. So the organization will be given general support. We're not going to tie you down to project activities, even though you would share in your proposal what activities you will be able to implement with this funding. This is a general support. And then the next type of funding is a Thrive grant. And this is a 1-year, also a 1-year general support. And it's only support for groups that have been previously funded by the ITF. So if you're an organization that has been previously supported and funded by the ITF, you can apply for a Thrive grant because we want you to thrive. And this ranges from 25 to 50,000, and it's also general support. So groups may submit one application to either the seed or the Thrive grant. If a group submits more than one application, both may be found to be ineligible. So you can only apply to either the seed or the Thrive. And it only makes sense, right? Like if you've been funded before by the ITF, you cannot be applying for a seed, right? Because you're not just starting, you've been funded before. So definitely you need to apply for a Thrive grant. And if you've never been funded by the ITF before, you can't apply to the Thrive, right? Because what are you thriving? We need to start. We can't jump into thriving. We have to start with the seed, right? So yes, before you can flourish, we need to plant the seed. So this is particularly important, and it would be very unfortunate if people were to be declared ineligible just because of a silly mistake like this where you apply to both, because sometimes you can be like, oh great, there's 2 strands, let me improve my chances of getting funded, let me apply to the seed and let me apply to the Thrive. Both applications would be declared ineligible, and we wouldn't want that to happen because you would have put in a lot of work in applying. All right, so we just have about 6 more slides to go, bear with me. What you need to know, the ITF encourages applications from all regions of the world. We accept applications for funding in English, French, Russian, and also simplified Chinese and Spanish. So we work in 5 languages, and you can, if your working language is either Chinese, Spanish, Russian, French, you can submit your application in that language and we'll be able to translate your application. Groups can be registered or unregistered. This is the question that came up. Unregistered groups in general need to get a fiscal sponsor to receive the grants. And then we will provide groups with core or general support. So this is particularly important. We are providing you with core support. So what core support means is we'll give you the money, just do what your organization does. and we are not really tying you down to a particular project activity. Video applications are welcome from groups that cannot submit written applications. Videos should be no longer than 10 minutes and should answer the application questions. So you will find the application form and the application format. So if you wanted to do it in a video, if you are a creative, like most Gen Z and millennials are, you might want to, yes, you might want to spice it up a bit and put in a video application. We also do accept video applications. So please, you can use that route as well. And you can only submit one application per group. Again, this is an eligibility issue. Please ensure that you submit one application per group. All right, so a few tips. I'll be doing a disservice if I left this discussion without providing a few tips. So make sure your application is complete. So fill in all the fields in the application form, include the requested details, respond with NA where it's not applicable. So don't force things. If you feel that whatever question is being asked is not applicable, please just put NA. Do not leave a blank. That is very important. The ITF will not follow up on incomplete applications and they may be considered ineligible. I'm sure people are tired of hearing that word, ineligible. But it's very important because I don't want any of your applications to be ineligible. So be clear and concise. So we follow a strict page limit, and this would help us to fairly evaluate applications. So applications must not exceed 8 pages. Font size should be no smaller than 11. Please note that we will not review materials after 8 pages. Additional materials, reports, strategic plans, etc., will not be reviewed at this stage. So just to make it practical, whoever will be reviewing after page 8, they'll be like, bye. I'm not reading any more of this, right? Because it's a lot. I mean, it's a lot. People are not, it's not that we want to be divas or anything, but we just want to ensure that people stick to the 8 pages that we've requested for. We do understand that there's a lot of backup information that you'd want to share, but at this particular stage, we just want to know who you are. And once your application is shortlisted, we then can request for further information and further details. So also remember your reviewer, right? It's important to keep in mind who's reviewing your application. So your application will be reviewed by ITF's grant-making panel, who are trans activists from different parts of the world. This means you should write to your peers, but know they may be peers who know very little about your working context. So you might actually find that, you don't assume that just because these are trans activists, then, it's a given that they know what you do. They may be peer trans activists, but please ensure that you're very, very clear. You're very clear about what you're writing. And if from my grant-making experience, I could just give an example, right? Sometimes people write things like, we want to influence the government. Okay, how, right? So if I'm a reviewer on the other side, the question that will come is how, right? And then the other useful tip that I could share that people should always use when you're putting out your objectives and activities, always ask the so what question, because that is the question that the reviewer is asking. We want to go on the streets and demonstrate. Great, we love demonstrations, but so what, right? We need to know why you're demonstrating, right? And if you say why you're demonstrating, right? So for example, you say, we want to go on the streets because we want to demonstrate. Why are you demonstrating? Well, because a clinic where we used to access hormones has been closed down. Okay, then, okay, yeah, because the clinic has been closed down, trans folks are not able to access hormones, right? Then that touches us, right? So what's not going to touch us? We'll be like, oh, you're demonstrating, oh, shame. But what's going to touch the reviewer is that trans activists are not accessing hormones, right? So we start from the demonstration, and the demonstration is because the clinic is closed. And because the clinic is closed, trans people are not able to access hormones. Now that gets the attention of the reviewer. So it's always important when you put in an application not to be vague. Ask yourself, be your own reviewer, and ask whether that is actually making sense. Ensure your application stands out, right? Be clear what you will do with the funding. Make sure you tell us what impact it will have on your community and the trans movement. The competition for funding is very high, and you need to make a case for why your work is important to trans movement building in your region. This is your time to shine, right? So shining is not a difficult thing for us trans people, right? Make yourself shine, make your application shine, make it stand out, right? Then be realistic, right? So you are the experts of what needs to be done in your context. So tell us what your group wants to do and not what you think we want to hear. This is very important. So the best applications are ambitious, but realistic. This includes the budget as well. Ask for funding that your group needs to do the work. So ensure that you're being realistic in the activities that you're putting across, but also the budget that you're asking for. So complete the budget correctly. So the ITF has adopted a simplified budget template within the application form. The ITF believes that grantees and the GMP should focus on the work itself versus the budget line. So you must fully complete the table, right? And the budget section, the budget is divided into two sections. We have section 1, which is, I know there's somebody who raised their hand, I think.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I just want to tell you that there's someone in the chat box that's making this space not very safe. So
Okay.
I hope that you can do something about it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Did you hear that?
Yes, it's down to it. They've been removed already.
Okay, great. All right. Then so the budget template is divided into two sections. So section 1 is for general support, co-funding only, and then section 2 is for project support, if applicable. So if you're applying for project support, you'd be using section 2. If you're applying for both, you use both section 1 and section 2. And then, so general support is things like staff salaries, rent, and things like that. And then project support will be like activities, workshops, campaigns. So that will be like project support. Then provide as many details as possible to help the GMP clearly understand the uses for the grant and evaluate the proposal. Please state the amount in US dollars and not your local currency. We are not trying to discriminate currencies here, but I think when you put it in US dollars, it helps the reviewers put the amount into context because we have reviewers from all over the world. And if you put it in Zambian kwacha, somebody may not know, whether 20,000 Zambian kwacha is a lot of money or not a lot of money. So it always just helps us if you put the application in US dollars. So the total at the bottom of the budget template should equal the total that you are requesting for from the ITF. All right, then if the budget is not complete, your application may be found to be ineligible, right? So that's very important. You have to ensure that your budget is also complete. All right, then how to apply and submit your application by 5th December at 5 p.m. New York time. 5 p.m. New York time, that would be midnight here. Yes. So for Southern Africa, that would be midnight. But you can also use timeanddate.com to do your conversion, your time conversions, right? Then please submit your complete application through the online form available on our website. So go to www.transfund.org or send it directly to info@transfund.org or ITF_info@protonmail.com. So in terms of submitting the applications, just go to www.transfund.org and you'll find all the submission details there. And this is particularly important where I mentioned that if you need enhanced security, because info@transfund is Google based. So if you need enhanced security, use ITF_info@protonmail.com.
My question is more about the participation. Are you only supposed to participate in one group? Because I sit in different organizations in many different capacities. And I was wondering now if one of organization is applying and I send through a different application, how does that impact my eligibility?
All right. So there's a question around if you sit. So sometimes you might sit on various boards, like in different groups. If that is the case, as long as it's a different organization that is applying, for us, we will look at the organization. But then, yeah, it has to be the organization that we primarily look at. But then we also are going to look at who is leading the organization. So you may not be the director, but you're on the board, right? Which is fine, yeah. But then if you put in like 5 applications and you are the director in all the applications, I think that might be, I'm sure the grant making panel might find that to be a bit problematic, right? Might find that to be a bit problematic. But if you are involved in various organizations and those organizations do apply, I think that should be fine. And then there's a question, why as trans in Tanzania, we are not getting funding from you? Okay, so thank you so much for that question, Lusungu. And like I mentioned, we try as much as possible to accommodate all regions. And it's a competitive process at the end of the day, and it's a panel of 15 people making the decisions purely based on the merits of the application. So we wouldn't really be looking at the country, but we would be looking at the content of the application. So what I would encourage is what I would encourage is for you to reach out more to us so that we could probably assist you. We have what we call direct review services, where you can actually request for the staff of ITF to review your application before it goes to the GMP for final review, so that we can give you some feedback. Pardon? Yes, direct review service, so DRS. So we have a direct review service where our program officers would pre-review your application, give you some feedback before you can make a final submission. So you can reach out to us should you need that particular service. And then there's a question on, please tell us more about the fiscal sponsor. So really the fiscal sponsorship arrangement is entirely up to you as an organization, in terms of who are you comfortable with in terms of receiving funding on your behalf, right? So it has to be an organization that you trust, and it is you as the applicant organization that would be advising us to say, I want my funds channeled through this organization. And in terms of the fiscal host, the idea is not for the fiscal host to host your money, but it's really just to receive the money on your behalf. So once the money is wired to the fiscal host, the expectation is that the host will then wire or give the full amount or pass on the full amount to you as the applicant organization, because the relationship is between you and us and not us and the fiscal host. You are just advising us to say, look, I don't have a bank account, or I don't feel safe receiving these funds. Could you rather wire the money to this organization? And there will be an MOU that will be signed between you and that organization to say that they will be receiving the funding on your behalf.
So there's a question from Kumkani and also Sylvester.
Yes. Okay, so I see some questions in the chat box, but did Sylvester and Kumkani post the question in the chat box?
No, they didn't.
Okay.
Kumkani's hand has been up for some time.
Okay, so Kumkani, can you ask your question?
My question has been answered. It's the one that you just answered now in regards to a host organization.
All right. And Sylvester?
Thank you for the presentation. So one may be a quick one, and this you can respond in regards to the physical host. Should the physical host be a translate organization or any other organization? That's one. And then the issue of, you said that ITF gives support to new organizations that are unregistered. So I wanted to understand if someone is doing capacity strengthening, should we term that as a core support, like a general core support, or do you then put it in the project docket in terms of budgeting? Because it's organizational capacity strengthening, but it entails different activities where maybe you're required to hire a consultant also. So I just needed your guidance in that regard. And then if an organization is startup, like you said, a group or an organization has not really registered, they do not have proper structures in terms of office space and all that. Do they, in their budget, can they include salaries in their budget when they do not have, they have volunteers, but they need to pay staff, but they've never received any funding from any donor? Can they include then funds for staff under the general core support and issues to do with rent and office utilities if it's a new organization without space? Yeah.
Yes, so let me quickly answer that because I also see there's another question on co-funding in the chat box. So maybe let me answer that and also in there answer your question because there was like, can you elaborate more on co-funding? So co-funding really caters to the core activities of your organization. So if we speak about core support, core support basically means if you're an organization that works on a particular issue, we are recognizing that you work on a particular issue and we are giving you funding to be able to undertake that particular work. And that funding, yes, so versa, is for salaries. That funding can be for your rent. That funding can be for transport. That funding can be for communication activities and stuff like that. So yes, to answer your question, if it's a new organization being set up, you've got volunteers and those, we don't want a scenario where people are just working like volunteers and they're not being remunerated. So you do put that in your core support and you say, we are not registered, but we have volunteers and we have an allowance for volunteers, and this is the allowance for volunteers. Or if we have salaries for volunteers, and these are the salaries for volunteers. So you need to, you can put that in the core support. And then the question on the capacity strengthening, it's a very good question because capacity strengthening, I think you can look at it twofold, right? So there is capacity strengthening where you're working with community groups, holding workshops, building the capacity of community groups. But then there's also the capacity where you're building your own capacity, right, as an organization. That would go into core support because then I'm assuming you'd be paying consultants or you would be paying extra monies for somebody to do that kind of work, or any capacity strengthening activities that are related to building the capacity of the organization. That goes into core support because it's meant to build and strengthen the organization, and it's not going directly to the community in terms of a training or a workshop. And I think the other question was then from April, I guess.
Question also from Bulelani before April.
Okay, there's a question from Bulelani before April. Is it in the chat box?
No, it's not.
Okay, Bulelani, please. Bulelani, are you online for your question?
How are you guys?
Hi, Bulelani.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. So my question is actually on if you are a formal group that has already started working. I'm gender non-conforming. I do not identify as a trans individual, but we have like more than 5 individuals who are part of the group that we are working with. And one of our main work is political advocacy and also advocating for the LGBTIQ community. Within the trans community are pushing for gender affirming healthcare within the region. So I wanted to actually ask on so if we are that group, because we are like a formal civil society forum under an organization, and we do like specific things around, but we do have like formal things that we do every year with the limited budget that we are offered from that organization. So for me, my question is, if then we look at supporting the work that we are already doing, would we then apply for the seed grant, and must we be specific to one project, or must we outline how we would use the fund throughout the year? Yeah, I hope I'm making sense. That is my my question. Yeah.
I will try and put it together, don't worry.
Okay.
These funding questions are always not easy to put across. So I think what you're asking is, and not at the cost of putting words into your mouth, but I think what you're asking is if you're kind of like a startup, which I mean, general support is really giving you that room to do what you do, right, as an organization. So as an organization, you've got a mission, you've got objectives, you've got priorities. So general support would do that. We only require you in the application to then state, right, to say, we as an organization, these are our priorities. For the coming year, these are the kind of activities that we are foreseeing, just for us to have an idea, right, of what you're doing, and not really to put you in a box in terms of, no, you need to apply for project funding. So that's why we call it general support, and it essentially is there to support you as an organization so that you can continue to exist and do the work that you do best. So if you've got employees, that you are able to maintain employees. If you've got volunteers, you're able to maintain volunteers, right? But remember the so what question, right? We have volunteers who we need to pay. So what? The so what question comes in. Oh, this is what the volunteers are going to be doing for the next period, or this is our focus area, because we also want to know what you'll be focusing on. So it's the aim is not to limit you to project funding, but just for us to have an appreciation of what your organization would be doing. The other issue that you raised, it's a difficult one and I will not dodge it. I will face it. The issue around being gender non-conforming, and we are a trans fund and we support organizations that are trans-led. You know what I would encourage you to do is to put in the application anyways, so that we can review it on some merit, because I do understand that we do not have a fund for gender non-conforming people, right? I mean, we have an intersex fund, we have a trans fund, we have an LGBTIQ, we have LGBTIQ funding, but I feel that if you have quite a number of trans people involved in your organization, if you have a lot of 75% or more of your work is really targeted towards trans people, I feel that, we should still give you an opportunity to apply so that we can look at the application and give it some merit if it deserves some merit. And then there's a question on, can an organization apply for Thrive grant while it's still working from the seed grant? Yes, an organization can apply for a Thrive grant, because obviously the assumption is that that seed grant will come to an end, right? So, and you know that the closing date is 5th of December. And after that, there will be like a review process. So by the time the monies start going out, will probably be somewhere in the first quarter into the second quarter. So definitely an organization can still put in an application. And I think that is also the wisest thing to do, right? So that you don't have that gap in between funding. Then I'm trying to check the chat box, but I lost my mouse.
April. April was the next person.
Okay, April. Yes, April.
Hi. No, I actually did. I mean, you did manage to answer a question that I actually was a bit a bit puzzled about, because with our organization, we do have, we actually did want to center and focus our funding more towards the projects. But then I was just unclear about the core support that you guys were talking about. But you did elaborate for me, so thank you for that.
Okay, great.
I have one more question.
Yes. So did you have one? Okay. Then I'll come this way.
So I just wanted to understand, do you have to apply annually? Because I realized, and do you also have to apply year in, year out? Like what happens after that, after a year?
Okay, great. Good question. And maybe I can have the other one as well.
Okay, I wanted to ask about your criteria for defining trans people. Do we have to have our gender marker already changed, or can we be self-identifying?
Self-identifying will be self-identifying will be fine, right? Self-identifying will be, we wouldn't put in like, do you have to have your gender marker change? Or I mean, like for us, we just use self-identify. If you self-identify as a trans person, then you are a trans person, right? I think this is the conversations that we're having last week with the EU and the South African government. But coming back to your question, we have been looking at having like multiple year grants, and we have, that is a work in progress. That, you know, for the future, we could have a situation where you apply for a 2-year funding or 3-year funding, but currently we are only able to offer 1-year funding. And that is the reason we introduced the Thrive grant, so that once you have had funding with us before, if you apply for Thrive, we're actually just appreciating the fact that you've already implemented something and might want to continue or scale up or build on what you have already started on. So for now, it's you would need to keep applying every year. But we are definitely looking into and Jabu is here from the steering committee. They'll make those decisions. We are looking at the possibilities of multi-year grants, because it only makes sense, right?
And also, as the year navigates, does the funding price range increase, or does it just remain fixated? Because I realize that it's $10,000 to $25,000
for seed.
Seed, and that is what, 250,000 max, or maybe more. But then
I think as we grow as the fund as well, because remember we also have donors that fund us. As we grow, we keep reviewing. I think what we have now, the scenario that we have now, is not the scenario that we had in 2017. So there is room for review. There is room for growth. There is room for also recategorization, and so we'll definitely have that. You know, keep everyone posted on our website. Great. Jabu, you had a hand. Yes. I'm trying to mute myself with my mouth.
It's fine. Is it okay? Can you hear me? Okay. So I was just gonna suggest that. Oh, I can hear myself. So I was just gonna maybe make a few suggestions, if that's okay. Some of them really relate to when you are thinking about your application, which I think a lot of first-time grant applicants, or as you think about your money for seed applications, don't think about like too much infrastructural costs. So in other words, if it's rent, it doesn't have to be that you've got to go now find a building and you've got to do all these other things that other NGOs do. I think stay within the parameters of how you want to pace your program and your project and your growth. And I mean, when you think about your core support, think about how much data you use to call your members, or your calling or your transport, because in a lot of cities and countries, we use a lot of ground travel, and for transportation and so on. So really think quite carefully around that particular issue. And I just wanted to also speak briefly about the fiscal host relationship. I do think it's very important to choose your fiscal host well. And well, I mean, an institution that has a good financial reputation, that can be available to you as needed, but you have to stick to your project plan in the way you've budgeted. But why I'm saying this is because there have been historical problems where an organization has chosen a poor fiscal host. That fiscal host has stolen the money of the grantee, and then there's an issue, and there isn't sufficient record to say whether how the money disappeared, or I mean, these are minority cases, but you don't want to be that minority case. So choose your fiscal host wisely. Also, record keeping. If you are wanting to retain a good, healthy relationship going forward and in your growth, keep every single piece of paperwork so that you account for the money that you receive. It is taxpayers' money. It's money that we have to account for. And I always try to emphasize this with grantees who are starting out, because it's really fundamental. Sorry if it has been repeated, but I just want to emphasize those pieces as well. Thanks.
All right. Thank you so much, Jabu. Thank you for that. We should be, I know we're over time. We should be wrapping up now. I'm not sure if there are any last burning questions, either from, oh yes, Thomas.
Okay. So my question is the unrestricted funding.
Yes.
Who exactly qualifies for that? Like organizations or groups that have been funded before, or I can just come as the first timer and apply for that.
Okay.
And also, can that then be used to do stuff that you not find? So for example,
yeah.
And then also another question that many people have been asking me, like, does submitting your application early increase your chances, or does waiting like the last minute reduce your chances of getting the
yeah. I'll start with the last question. It's the easiest. So does submitting your application early increase your chances? No. Your application will say thank you, we received your application, and it will sit there. And we will only unbox all the applications once the application deadline goes. So whether you submit your application early or later, it doesn't matter. But I think as a guide, it's always just good to start preparing your application early enough and not to leave it to the last minute, because a lot of things happen, right? Load shedding happens, the internet goes out, and then you start panicking, right? And then, but if you start if you start preparing your application early, it's always better. But submission date does not matter as long as it's before submission deadline. Right? I know people say early bird catches the worm. But anyways, then in terms of core support, yes, that's a good question, Thomas, because what we're saying with the core support and the general support is that we can fund you as an organization to do what you do best, right? But that's why we have the write-up of what is it exactly that you do as an organization, right? What is your mission? What are your objectives? What are your priorities? And what are you going to be prioritizing? And I also just want to clarify that it's not that we don't support direct services, it's just that we don't want the whole application to be about direct services. Movement building is core to the work that we do. So if you're receiving core support, you should be able to demonstrate that you might be providing direct services, but in providing direct services, you also have some movement building activities that are built into that, right? Because movement building is particularly important. I need not say more. Somebody tried to destabilize us, tried to hack us, tried to discourage us. That is why movement building is important, right? We need to be resilient. We go through a lot of things, and it's particularly important that we are supporting movement building so that we can have resilient trans groups, resilient trans movements, because we are a movement that is under attack. We are a people that is under attack, and we need to be resilient as a people, and we need to ensure that the funding that we have also helps us and assists us to be resilient. Okay.
So when can folks expect responses?
Okay, so we will have somewhere right after February 18th, I think, is when, yes, I think after February 18th, you should start expecting responses. Also, just realizing that December is kind of like a dead month, especially if you're in this part of the world. So a lot of the review work will happen January, February. So after February 18th, you should start hearing back from us. Okay. All right, so with the permission of Iranti, I just want to bring this to a close. Again, I want to apologize for, for the intruders that we had, but these things happen when you're out there and you put something out there. People that are bored, people that have got small egos, this is time for them to play, and we understand, and we actually feel sorry for them. But all I can say is thank you very much for joining us. Looking forward to applications. Remain beautiful, remain vibrant, and love you all. Thank you.